I'm Judith E Martin. I come from Canada. I live on an island right now, Manitoulin Island. I've lived there for 30 years. It's in the center of North America because it's in one of the Great Lakes. It's an island in the Great Lake. And I've been quilting for 50 years. I started when I was in my 20s, actually it just was 20. And I started because the old-fashioned quilts, like the Dresden plate, were coming into style for decor. And in movies, when I was going to movies, I would see that people in New York were putting quilts like this on their living room, and I really loved them, and I thought I wanted to learn how to make them. So I was inspired by popular culture to go back to this craft, and I taught myself. I mean, how hard could it be? I sewed all my high school clothes, and so actually in this quilt, this particular fabric here is one that was a blouse that I made myself when I was in grade 11. And so many of the fabrics in this Dresden plate, it's interesting that we're starting here because these fabrics are 50 years old. Some of them are from high school, some of them are from when I was first married. And so they've faded, they've worn out, and if some of them have worn out, you can see I put some velvet on top. But what I did was take off the whole plate off of the white background I'd originally put it on, and then put it on a new square of all these wools and rayons and silks have been dyed with plants, and they're brand new. But the plates are 50 years old. And they, when you look at them, you know how people say you could look at a fabric and you can remember when you wore it when you were 5 years old, or what your mother did, or I can remember wearing this skirt when I was a bride, and going to buy the groceries for the first time for my husband. And so they bring back all these memories, and that's what quilts do for us when we touch things like that. So this is very much a quilty type quilt. It's full of dreams and it's full of softness, and it sort of has my history in it. And it's called You Are a Single Star, because when I made the quilt, there was enough to do. There were 3, and then it was very long quilt. But then when I put it into the square format, I was short 1 plate. So I made a star out of new pastel fabrics. And so that was my title, You Are a Single Star. And we are each unique people. And the back, the back. The back is damask linen. A natural dyer mailed me because she was cleaning her studio and it had holes. I had to mend it, but I think it really looks nice. It's very soft. You can see another place where I mended it right here. So I mended this radial thing that she sent me because it was so soft. And so this is the title of the show, actually. This side is called Softer and Dreamier because it's so soft. And you can see I stitched it with black wool thread in kind of a dreamy way. And these are stitched on with regular hand quilting thread, but this is wool black thread like a drawing. This piece is called Earth and Air. And this is the earth part, and this is the air part. And when we think of romantic paintings, sometimes we think about a figure standing on a cliff looking out over big expanse. And there's some famous paintings of people, you see their back, and they're looking out over this big, immense sky valley. Or the other painting it reminds people of is The Kiss by Klimt. This is the second piece in the show that has machine work in it. These are the only 2 pieces. I machine stitched these, made little fabrics, they call string piecing, using strips of my naturally dyed wool, and had my own fabric, and then I cut these weird shapes and hand stitched them together to make this figure. For the white, it's damask tablecloth and it's white linen. And so there's a strip of white linen and then there's a strip of damask. And I seamed them together with the machine, but in big blocks, 24 inches wide. And then when I looked at them on my design wall, I loved the raw edge side more than the regular side, so I decided to put that side out for the air. And so I just continued stitching. That was the machine. This was now getting put by hand, and I put them together by applique. I'm always led by the materials, but once I start to work, then I get told what to do by these materials. So then the last step was to put it on a piece of damask and hand stitch it with big thread. So, but there's no, you can see there's no edge to this. It's just very raw all the way, which continues to me the airy quality of it. They take a long time to make. This piece is called Faraway Stars, and the name actually came last. It wasn't the first thing I thought of. The first thing I thought of was the horizon line, and I called it in my mind the horizon piece, because all of these tucks are, for me, the horizon, and I think the horizon is a friend for everybody because it gives us something to look beyond. You know, it's not a real line. It's just, and it puts us into this other inner world when we look at the sky over the horizon line. And you can see here I sort of put some little stars there. I'd like to tell you about all these different fabrics because these are from the beginning of my natural dye career when I was learning how to use the plants in my yard. So I used little scraps of cotton and little scraps of silk to dip in and soak and see, and I learned so much. And with those little scraps, maybe they were different sizes, they were just, then I sewed a tuck in each one, and then I lined them all up so that they, on a layer, I layered them on a piece of cotton, so I had this great big long strip of little strips with a tuck that matched, and then I put them together into this vertical piece. So that's this side, and it's really beautifully soft, and then it's backed with Australian wool. I ordered this wool from Australia. You can do anything online now, right? And so I thought I want to just try this white Australian wool, lightweight, and so I ordered a bunch, and I used 3 layers. There's one layer, another layer in the middle, and then there's another layer. It's very soft, so it's quite a lot of wool. So it is a quilt, but it doesn't have a quilt bat, it just has layers. So I'd like you to see the other side now, which is just that white Australian wool. So this side was just plain white, and the other side was all the tucks and the little stars. And I thought it's not enough. It's not enough because I wanted it to be two-sided, and I thought, so I started with this beautiful, really loved this velvet, and so I put these shapes all over to make a kind of a landscape, a valley that I could look at. And so there was some of them here, and then I thought maybe it's done now, but I went back on the design wall and it wasn't good enough, so I took them off. And I hated to have wrecked them because I didn't have much of this color, but it was too much, and I came up with the idea that it needed to have a sky. So this is my cloud. I put a cloud here of these shapes and a horizon line, and so this is kind of a painterly, it's pretty painterly, and it's brand new. So this one is called Cloudy Day. I call this side intimacy. This is the back of the quilt, actually, and you know, I called it intimacy because when you think about what we do with the quilt, we pull it over our body, and this is the side that touches us. So that's why I called it that name. And I would like to talk about the beautiful pink fabric that it's made from, because I was piecing the other side, the Fragile Life side, from my old damask tablecloth by hand. I got to a certain state, and I thought I was sort of stuck, and then in the mail, this lady from Italy mailed me her studio. She said, I'm going to mail you some of my cloth. I'm cleaning out my studio. I said, okay. I didn't know she lived in Italy. I thought she lived, in the United States or something, but she lived in Italy, and 3 boxes from her studio came into my house, and one of them was filled with hand-woven, lightweight silk from India with these amazing colors. And she was a dressmaker, couture kind of. She worked for film, and she had these extra fabrics that she thought I needed, and I did need it. And I've told her that it's in here, and I hope that she sees this YouTube video and she can see that this is her fabric, and that's all she sent me of that color, and so I had to add some lilac as well. And there is a batting, but it's a very, very lightweight silk batting. So when you stitch it so densely, it becomes quite flat. And so I used some of her silk along the border to extend the piecing. So it has a very wonky border, so it's the same size as the silk back. I didn't cut any of the silk at all. And it's finished with a pillowcase edge, very finely and very thinly, and stitched in a different way, like stitched with a big stitch, where the grid of the other one gives the pattern of just the squares. And everything I do before I show it, I have it professionally photographed. And before I have it professionally photographed, I block it. I also like to wash it because it's been through a lot of handwork. I take it in the car, I take it outside, and so I want it to be clean, I want it to be blocked, and so I want it to be shrunk. It has this kind of beautiful texture from going through the laundry. So I'd like to talk about the way I thought about this work. Because this is all made from very old damask scraps that I had. Some of them I'd had for a long time and I'd used in other projects, or I've dyed again. This one shiny one is napkins. There's a tan color and a greenish color that just because of the dye they are different colors, but they're the same fabric. But it is used linen from the table. Anyway, I sorted out my small pieces into values and started with the lightest one, and then just started going around like one square and then another square, and then this would be two squares, and this. So I don't usually piece my squares in strips like that until I ran out of a color, and I didn't know how big it was going to get. And when I got to this mediums, I thought I don't want it to get any darker. I wanted to stop it. And so I put it onto the pink back, and there was enough at the pink back at the edges that I could add more silk to finish it off to be the exactly right size. And it was just perfect. And I would not have put this kind of border on without that backing being a gift for me. And so it's sort of, you don't really know about your life. Your life is just going to happen. You don't know when you're going to run out of a color, or you don't know anything. It's just to trust and to keep going on. So it's really my philosophy, and the title is Your Fragile Life. I call this piece Sacred Ground, and it's all wool, all been dyed with earthy colors, like leaves from the ditch of the willow tree that grows in my ditch, or Queen Anne's lace. And on some of them, I would applique a very rough, raw edge cross in some of these, and then made 9 patches. So there's some crosses, and piece them together, and I really love them just the way they were. Just a very simple patchwork with a few crosses. So I began to put this together and quilted it with white thread. But it wasn't enough, so then I added more thread. This thread here, I don't know if you can tell, is a complete skein of regular DMC embroidery floss, opened out and couched down with very fine red silk thread. So it fills it up and it makes it really heavy. And I chose the red because I use red thread a lot, but also because the back of the piece is red. And so this is called Red Sky, Red Water, and I often will use this kind of a tuck also to make the horizon line. And so it's a very lightweight piece, but when you put all that thread on it, it has this really sensuous feel to it. The last thing that went on was the circle. And people are thinking that it's just thread, It was a sheer fabric. I put on a sheer fabric and then started cutting it away until it was just the right amount of circle, and I stitched it. So it's a combination of, it is like drawing when you get to that at the end of my work. So, and that, just the thread though, comes through at the back. But there is a very sheer fabric there.